Good evening. Gemma G and her PhD Conscious Chatter. I haven't jumped on all week, so I thought it was a good time now to share a few things that have been sitting inside my brain over the last few days. So if you're out there, please to jump on and jump a comment into the comment section. Today I'm going to do a little bit of a chat about Schumanns Resonance and you. What else is on my topic list here? The power of language, and a little bit about the anti-aging benefits of melatonin. So I'll give you a minute. It is dinner time, isn't it? So as you jump in, say hi. I love knowing who I'm chatting to. So I've spoken about Schumanns Resonance before, and it's of particular interest to me through the studies and the work that I've been doing in the quantum realm. And I'll share a little bit about couple of things that have been happening for me personally, and how having an understanding about the Schumanns resonance and how it impacts us as beings, how that has helped me to sort of overcome the sensation, shall we say, that I was experiencing. So the last couple of nights I've been waking at silly hours, really, I suppose. And yes, I could definitely put that down to, a drop in energy, say, for example, in one of the organ systems, as the body has an organ clock, right? So various organs, they're not all operating at their high capacity all the time. That's inefficient. So they'll have different periods throughout that 24-hour period of where, say, for example, the liver will be doing its job, so most of the power will go towards that, for example. So it could be explained that way. However, this was a bit of an unusual sensation. So I think it was about 4:30 this morning, or it was some odd time, and I woke up with mass anxiety, and I was thinking, well, this is odd. What is this? What is this about? And instead of sort of feeding into it, as anxiety can do, where we can start creating these stories in our heads and start worrying about things that haven't happened, or however anxiety affects people. But it was more about this really strange, powerful sensation of uncomfortableness. It wasn't pleasant at all. And so, and as I said, instead of feeding into it, I was watching with curiosity of what was going on. And I decided when I did, I went back to sleep and then I woke up again. I thought, well, I'm going to see what the Schumanns resonance is doing, because this is very bizarre. And of course, we've just had a full moon, a big full moon. And that on an energetic level affects us more than what we realize, as do Schumann's resonance. So if you're unfamiliar with, the Schumann's resonance is the Earth's electromagnetic field. So it's effectively the Earth's heartbeat, shall we say. And we know through studies and through the science that every single being on this planet is impacted by the Schumann's resonance. And if you recall, not that long ago, we had the big blackout. There was 101 hours where there was no readings whatsoever, and they weren't able to collect any data. And of course, that was creating a bit of havoc on people also. So of late, there's been quite a few spikes in the energy that the Earth is giving off, and like quite significantly bigger spikes. And those electromagnetic frequencies impact us as the beings that we are. So we're affected, and in a way creates a stress through our electricals for lack of a better description, because remember we are light beings, and at that subatomic level things are affected, and so often it's misinterpreted as the body adapts to these peaks in energy outputs and things like that. So it can be misinterpreted as anxiety, for example, or as ascension symptoms, headaches, flu-like things, feeling wiped out, that kind of thing. So there's very, very, very real. And if you do take particular notice of the sensations that you receive in your system, and then you start connecting it with what's happening out in the invisible world, which is 96% of the world we live in, then you can start kind of connecting a few dots. And so that helps, at least I found that helped me to overcome the current state that I was in. So, oh, you hear Dexter, man. And about, from that anxiety perspective, because I know there are many out there that suffer, I have different ideas and theories about that. And one is that there's an internal signaling glitch happening. And so our circuits are receiving that there's something suboptimal, a patterning has been interrupted from whatever the signal is coming from, and so the internal alarm system is going, there's something wrong, and then we of course externalize, and we're looking for the threats on a subconscious level. And because it's an internal glitch, you're not going to find anything necessarily externally, and so then that system gets dialed up more because the body's going, but I know there's something wrong. All right, so that's the one. It's an immune response or a defense system response. Number two, it is also another perspective on anxiety, is that it's your inner world's response to the external environment. So therefore it is working as a detection mechanism. And so if we can then go, okay, well, what's happening, and start to observe, then we're able to use that as some guidance. So we don't want to be shutting these sensations down. Okay, we just need to understand what they are. And then the third sort of thought around this alarm bell that goes off is then also that there's information for us to receive as well. And so that's where using breath is so helpful. And we do talk about, breath being energy, life force, all that type of stuff. But think of breath not just from a oxygen basis, because I know that we understand what the air does and all of what's contained in the air we breathe, but I want you to think from a completely other level that we don't necessarily consider, and that is the you're breathing in and you're bringing in this invisible realm. So these teeny tiny little light particles, because everything is from the manifold of light, right? So the light particles that are coming in, like they're coded, they have information at a subatomic level. So use the breath to bring breath and light and energy into the areas of the body that aren't necessarily receiving that, and you'll actually find that sensation will dissipate. So that's my thoughts on Schumanns resonance and a personal experience for myself. So, because it's easy to go down that rabbit hole, right, when you get this overwhelming anxiety sensation, and it can be paralyzing for people, it really can. So having a few tools on it and to be able to go, hey, what's going on here, then we're able to pull our energy back into ourselves. So there's many of us out there that are, giving away our power, giving away our energy, and to whatever, whatever you want to, think of it as. And so we need to reclaim our energy back to ourselves, to our own alignment. So use breath to help that for sure. So that brings me on to another interesting I guess something I'm pretty obsessed with at the moment, and that's language. Our language, not only in the audio reel that the MP3 or the MP4 that's running through our head, the script. When we're not paying attention, what is our language? In addition to also as I say, the movie reel that will often be tripped when we are going into a state of stress potentially, or just drifting off somewhere. One moment, because my dogs have come in and just left the door wide open. Hold on, I'm right back.
Don't you know how to close the door?
No. Are you coming up, Jack? Oh, these little fellas, just on a side note, you went on an adventure today, didn't you, Jackie? So they're pretty tired. Anyhow, so language. So as we... one of the things that really was pivotal for me a couple of years ago is I did a workshop with a wonderful, very, very powerful woman, Amanda Betts, and she has the Heart Speak, and she does these Heart Speak jacket workshops, among a lot of other things. And I can recall a couple of years ago, when I did one of these workshops, I didn't think much of it at all. I thought, great, going to do a jacket. So for those who have been following me for a little bit now, you'll be familiar with my leather jacket that has the white rabbit on the back of it. So that's something that I designed through this workshop, and that experience was very profound, much more than just making a jacket. And on the bottom of it, on the jacket itself, it has a huge power kind of strip, and it says, "Do not create limits." So it got me it's something that I've been really working with a lot personally, is in the language that we use, and the thoughts that we consistently have, and how we, in a lot of the times, without even realizing we're doing it, we are creating our own limits, right? We're getting in our way, and therefore then, we're a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I speak about this a lot, and it's first of all, you've got to be aware of that we are creating that, and it's easy to get into that habit. It really, really is. So coming up with examples or limitations, because we can't conceive or perceive how something can be possible. So for example, if you're wanting to, if money's a big thing for people, and I'll use that because that's what a lot of people can resonate with. They want to do something, yet they don't have the money for it. However, that's only because they can't think of where or how they're going to generate this, money falling out of the sky scenario. You did it again, boys. Anyway, so we need, I feel that the more that we're aware of the thoughts that we have and the language that we're using, that we can start to see our own negative programming, shall we say, our negative patterning. Lord knows we all do it. And that's something I said to a person coming into my space. It came up in conversation where they just were like, I just don't know where I'm going to get the money for this sort of thing. And I said, well, here's your first task, right? Let's change the thought. Let's change our language. Let's change the belief, because this will be something that plays out in every aspect of our lives, where we end up getting in our own way through language itself. You don't need to know how it's going to happen. The universe is far more intelligent than that. You just need to speak what it is that you are wanting to achieve or to happen, and hold firm that no matter what, that is what's going to happen, and that you release the expectation of how it comes in. And then when you get these little signs out of the blue, like it could be the weirdest stuff. For example, it might be someone you haven't heard from for ages, or within a short period of time of setting this intention. Because remember, intention moves energy, right? Intention moves energy, and thought is the only thing that travels faster than the speed of light. So your silent thoughts, your spoken word, your written language, like this is all a method of spelling. So spelling as in manifesting, as in alchemy, as in creation, right? So I really want to shout out to anybody out there who feels that they're really stuck in a situation they can't find themselves out of. They're not sure how they're going to be able to negotiate or navigate their way through whatever is going on in your world, and focus on the outcome, because where attention goes, energy flows. And you are way more powerful than what you realize and what you've been taught. And through the thought, through the feeling, through the belief, through holding that energy, through holding that space. That's what we talk about when we hold space. So no matter what is happening, don't let it knock you out of that sensation, and be specific. That's the other thing. Be specific in what you're wanting to bring in, and then be specific in your timing as well. Because the universe is black and white, right? If you're not going to say when you need something by, it might show up in another 50 years. So be clear and be specific on what it is that you are wanting to bring into your world, and try it. And remember, gratitude, being grateful, joy, those states of bliss is how we tap the invisible space. Super cool, right? Hold tight, I'm just going to close this door again because I'm trying to heat this room up. And then I'm going to speak a little bit about, what was the other thing I was going to talk about? Melatonin, the anti-aging aspects of melatonin. Oh, boys, it'd be great if you could close the door. Okie dokie dokie. So, here we go. This is where I've got a few notes. So melatonin, when most people think about melatonin, they think about sleep, right? And we may know some basics that most of it's produced through the pineal gland. But there's a lot that is not understood or known about melatonin. In fact, I consider it the linchpin in the system, right? So it's an incredibly important signal itself, and is very much damaged through mental stress, because the mental stress is like electrical storms, shall we say, in the brain, where you get a whole bunch of static, and that melatonin signal, because remember, everything is a signal, everything is a frequency, and if that becomes stressed, then the fallout from that is quite significant. So let me give you a little insight to melatonin here. One of the big problems that we have, of course, in our modern world is that the pineal gland itself becomes damaged. So either becomes calcified through various means, one of the main ones through having fluoride in the water. And then there's other things that we probably haven't considered. So birthing injuries, for example, where those really tiny soft tissue structures have been damaged through forceps, ventouse, traumatic births, anything like that. There is that possibility that some of those vulnerable structures in the brain do get damaged. And we also know that through this little pineal gland, of course, as it calcifies and it atrophies, then the production of melatonin is definitely impacted. Not only that, but melatonin itself, as we go through our life decade, shall we say, the signal becomes weaker, and we know the production significantly drops. So melatonin levels themselves are the highest at around 10 years old. So they peak when we're quite young. Now, as I was saying before, it's actually a linchpin in the system. If you don't produce melatonin, you can't produce glutathione. And I'll simply put it like this: if you can't produce glutathione, you will die. There's thousands and thousands of articles on glutathione and the link to inflammation, chronic inflammation, and poor health, dis-ease, however you want to label it, right? You can all link it back to melatonin. So when our production of melatonin is impacted negatively, it's also linked to the decrease in the circadian rhythm. So circadian rhythm is, again, often thought of being linked to the photo, what am I trying to say? The photo periods throughout the day or through the season, so night and day, or dark and light, that type of thing. However, and it's true. However, circadian rhythm is actually cell-driven. So I find that incredibly fascinating, and it's through a big, loop of the SCN, the substantia, It's obviously too late because I can't remember that technical term. I just call it the SCN, is what it's driven through as well. So the problem being is that when melatonin production is impacted, it's also creates a disorganization and through the neuroendocrine system. And again, this is where a lot of our illnesses and disease come into play, because when you think about the body as from a multidimensional well-being, shall we say, or even just in the physical realm of well-being, then emotions rule. They trump everything. Because remember, emotions, yes, they're feelings, positive and negative. They all they have such a strong drive and such a strong effect on us as humans, and they have an biochemistry associated with them all as well. So it's like a cocktail of different levels of stress hormones and what have you. So we end up having, so emotions, sorry, that's where I was going to loop that back. So emotions trump everything. And then, of course, you've got your lymphatic, your nervous system, your cardiovascular system. But then you've got like your endocrine system, your hormones and glands. It gets quite high up in terms of the priority line and the body being able to carry out all of the gazillions of processes that happen. No, you do not need to know the exact molecular structure of all processes in the body, because when it comes through these random biofusions and biochemistry events that occur, at an infinite level, nobody truly understands that. So don't worry about it. But there's a wide variety of effects that melatonin has. So strap in. I love it. Here's a side note for you. It's anti-cancer, so there's one, right? So that's pretty huge. All fertility issues are linked to suboptimal melatonin signaling. Remember, you do not run out of producing things. It's the signaling that becomes weak and damaged, broken, and therefore the production is affected because the signal is not getting heard, right? So it synchronizes the production and release of hypothalamic and pituitary factors and hormones as well. So the hypothalamus is your main master control center. It's fascinating. Your optic nerves, basically, if you want to go in terms of other hierarchies, look at the optic nerve. The optic nerve receives everything. It tells us whether something's familiar to us. Have we seen this before? is there any danger? Is there a threat? We're constantly looking for what we know, right? And those, the optic nerves themselves are incredibly amazing data processing cable, high-speed cabling, really. And as they come in through the eyes, right, or sorry, not coming through the eyes, as the optic nerve behind the eyes, it then threads back. I'm going to go towards you guys. It threads back, and then there's what they call the optic chasm, and then it connects into this hypothalamus. So everything's relayed through the hypothalamus, and then of course there's the subthalamic and the thalamic tracts, and there's a whole bunch of other cool, midbrain and whatever structures. So it triggers the hypothalamus. Or the retina, of course, and that triggers melatonin production, all sorts of things. So there's links with the hypothalamus, the main control center, and then the pituitary gland. They're all signaled through production of and synchronizing of the melatonin, right? So it's really is key. It's so important for us as human beings. And we do need this direct sunlight for certain periods of time. Early morning is best, so that we are going to stimulate the retina. So we are going to create a cascade of these events, these significant events. So if you're constantly with sunglasses on, I do recommend you educate yourself on the sensible guidelines on how to get some light codes into your eyes, sensibly, of course. So when we think about anti-aging and what has melatonin got to do with that? Well, aging is associated with desynchronization of the entire neuroendocrine system. So if melatonin and the release of melatonin itself is responsible for synchronizing the production and the release of the neuroendocrine aspect, then you can see that link when we are suboptimal in our melatonin production, because then that's going to be disorganized, and that governs a whole bunch of processes in our system. And so that's what they believe aging is associated with, this desynchronization of the entire neuroendocrine system, and it leads to decrease in health and an increase in aging. So aging, another perspective of looking at that, aging is also your electrical circuits getting scattered, scrambled, damaged, weakened, broken, whatever, because we are light beings. Keep coming back to that. Really is true. So melatonin has actually a very protective factor also. So it's linked with protecting the brain from our neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, autism, and all those types of things. And it's through many processes. One of them being that melatonin modulates pro and anti-inflammatory cytokines. So, if it's anything that's become suboptimal or upregulated or outside of the normal bandwidth of what it's supposed to do, it's going to start creating stress and chaos within the system. So then when typically you may say, for example, have a anti-inflammatory cytokine response, that may not happen and instead get the other, because all these secondary chronic inflammation pathways that get out of control, they still don't really truly understand. The Western world doesn't. But when you get into this integrative medicine approach, you start to really understand how all of this starts to occur. So as I say to people, shit flows downhill, doesn't it? So you've got to go higher up. Where's the source? Where's the problem? So melatonin also regulates gene expression, so how your genes are expressed. And as we have been indoctrinated for many years, because we didn't know any better, but we do now know better, that you're not stuck with the genetics. As there are infinite ways that your genes can be expressed. And we only really tap into a tiny percentage of how the DNA and the genes are expressed. So melatonin is important for us if we're wanting to be able to look at how our gene expression is occurring. Helps fight chronic inflammation, has a protective aspect against viral, bacterial, and parasitic infections. It regulates the immune response. So this is also why, in the early days of our current global situation, they were all saying, not the experts on the single source of truth, of course, they weren't telling us at all, but those in the know were talking about melatonin and how important it is, and such a crucial impact it has against these viral infections that we have. So yeah, it's protective against viral, bacterial, and parasitic infections. And hold on, where am I going with this one? Influences energy metabolism. So energy production itself, what does that got to do with anti-aging? Well, if it is influencing how we create and generate energy, then we're far more efficient of that. And it's through energy that energy is light, right? So that's where we create more energy through the body, and the more energy you have, the less you're going to break down. So think about, I really don't like coming into a comparison, say, to a vehicle, for example. However, if you were running a car and the engine is inefficient in its energy production, or you need to clear the air filter out or whatever, I don't know, it's not my bag, but you get what I mean, then it's more stress on the system. You're going to burn through more fuel, etc., and then your car starts to kind of have one thing after another, like mine is these days. So energy production is really, really important. So melatonin influences that. It has a strong influencing factor on how we metabolize and create energy. So it protects against liver injury. And shout out to those doing Dry July. I won't be joining you. I did a dry, I don't know, whenever it was, not long ago. And it was great. I loved it. But I'm not officially doing a whole Dry July. So protects against liver injury caused by alcohol. Protects and restores mitochondrial function. So here's another way it helps us with energy production. So the mitochondria are like your batteries, your powerhouse inside the cell, right? And so they create a huge amount of waste as well. Just think about the little factories. So we want to be able to have mitochondria in the cell operating without any damage to them, right? So remember I was talking about oxidative stress and how things break down really slowly, and the best example I can give you is your banana as it starts to get the brown spots. Well, as humans, as we get these aging spots on, right, that's oxidative stress. I'm going to put it in a really classy way. That is it's a slow rot, basically. And it's through the body not being able to produce enough of these key antioxidants, such as melatonin, such as glutathione, such as carnosine. So, and as I said at the very beginning, melatonin is a linchpin. You cannot produce glutathione if you don't produce melatonin. And glutathione is what helps the body neutralize this the free radicals, so you don't get this oxidative stress happening. So age spots, I've seen them completely disappear by correcting melatonin signals and glutathione signals in the body. So hit me up if you want to any more about that. Hold on a minute. Where did I get that? Because I was talking about mitochondrial functioning. Ha! Oh, So there it is. So I was going to say, so if you have high enough levels of glutathione and carnosine and melatonin, for example, the mitochondria as the unit, the organelle in the cell, they won't be damaged, they won't be attacked, because you'll have enough levels of these antioxidants. So don't go out there and buy a whole bunch of supplements, because often that's creating more stress on a system that's in toxic load, because then the liver has to break down and metabolize all of these synthetic, supplements that you're putting in your body. So I have seen far more of a turnaround in poor health, chronic health, anxiety, depression, infertility, widespread pains, aches and pains and things like that, through clearing inflammation out of the system using frequencies to get rid of the pain and the inflammation. And then, because you now have it's like you've tilled the garden, and you've got rid of all the crap, and you've actually got the grounds, the soil clear of any toxic waste and things that shouldn't be there. And then you can actually start to grow and repair. And that's what the same thing in the human body is a bit like. You got to get the inflammation out, otherwise you have got shitty soil. Technical terms and all. What else does it do? Protects against osteoporosis by helping to regulate and balance bone formation. And you could take that back even further and go, okay, well, hang on a minute. So if melatonin synchronizes and is involved in a lot of the, or not a lot, in the pituitary gland and all of the hormones and things that generates and creates, then we're also through that hypothalamus pituitary kind of pathway. Well, there's a few different axes that connect those key centers of the brain. So there's the hypothalamus pituitary to the adrenal axis. And if you've listened to some of my previous talks, adrenals basically govern it all. All right. So, it's really kind of through these indirect and direct loops as well that all these processes occur. Yeah. Stimulates a host of antioxidants and antioxidant enzymes. So, yeah, absolutely. It's a linchpin for all of this. As I said, you can't produce glutathione without producing melatonin, and melatonin is also a neuroprotective agent. So when we start looking at anything that is neurodegenerative, then we need to start understanding the damage through oxidative stress to these, neuronal tissues, whether it's the neurons in the brain or it's the big, longer neural networks through the system. We need these are crucial. That's your wiring. You don't want that breaking down because you need the signaling, right? You need the signals to be received, so then the signals can be responded to. So, and I'm going to just kind of link a little bit more into these dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, neurological aspects. When there's a lot of evidence and information out there that there's a big element to the gut health, right? And so with your, you can't get inflammation in through your intestinal tract. So I'll say it again, you cannot get inflammation in through your intestinal tract if you produce enough glutathione. You can't get inflammation through your arterial pathways if you're producing enough glutathione. And you can't produce glutathione if you don't produce melatonin. So let's talk about this link through the vagus nerve, right, which is your wandering nerve from the viscera, direct highway to the limbic system, and that there's a lot of studies and evidence that they're seeing now and going, actually, brain tissue health is linked to gut health. Well, duh, of course it is. And that inflammation has been found to travel up the vagus nerve because it's mainly a sensory nerve, right? Nonetheless, inflammation will spread through the body from nerve to nerve, through the nervous system, all right? So we need to have as lower inflammation levels in the body as possible. So seeing where melatonin is so important here, it's quite cool. And yes, Laura, I see you there. Is anti-aging. Absolutely. Isn't that what everyone's trying to do? Not anti-age, but to have better health, to have not be limited through pain or poor sleep or depression or fatigue or anger or stuck in the past because you've got this biochemistry link and cord to an experience that's holding you back. Got to demagnetize that stuff, right? And that's partly through being able to rebalance these important pathways and axes. So here we go. Melatonin activates a waste clearance system that is needed for removal of toxic amyloid and I can't even read what I've written here. Protein deposits, basically. So one of the things that occurs in terms of neurodegenerative disease in the brain is there's a glycolylated process that's happening where sugars and proteins bind and do severe destruction to the nerve tissues themselves. Well, if you have your main antioxidants in balance, and there's a symbiosis in the main ones, the melatonin, the carnosine, and glutathione, then you aren't going to have these reactive oxygen species gaining steam, shall we say, in terms of their ability to attack different types of tissue. So we need to be able to produce melatonin to activate these pathways to get the wastes out. It's really actually not as difficult as what we think. It's just a matter of being able to link some of the key pathways back together again and have them strong. The stronger your electrical signals into your system, the healthier the body. The more light you have, right? All right, so improves myelination of nerve fibers, and I suspect that's through a lot of different ways and direct and indirect pathways, and of course through the pituitary gland, through its link through the pituitary gland, because you're thinking about some of these important hormonal cascades that are orchestrated through the pituitary gland. And we've got progesterone, for example. Men and women have progesterone, and that's what is capable of repairing a myelin sheath, whereas we've not really sort of understood or had the ways and means to be able to do that, but we do with frequencies. You just need the signal for it, right? So thinking of brain and neurodegenerative breakdowns and things like that, well, our brain is metabolically extremely active. It produces a huge amount of free radicals. It really does. It consumes a large amount of your energy and also oxygen as well. So it's a greedy little sucker of an organ. And of course, when your optic nerve is fatigued, then the whole system is going to be fatigued, because that's linked to, well, everything. Remember, it runs like a train lines through the hypothalamus, right behind your eyes. It's quite cool. It sits about an inch back probably from right behind here. And of course, then you have the pituitary gland that sits slightly in front of the hypothalamus, and then the pineal gland is kind of tucked in at the back of the hypothalamus. Because it's that important. It's crazy important. So melatonin, again, we're talking about it. It's like the super king. It's like the superhero of the antioxidants in the body. Really, it is. It's a super antioxidant in the fact that it's able to cross the blood-brain barrier as well to counter this oxidative stress. So again, looking at some of the ways that we have been conditioned in the way that we live, and we've been told to stay out of this bright sun and all this kind of stuff. Don't look into the sun. Don't do all this kind of thing. Well, we need that stimulation, again, from a sensible aspect. So go do a little bit of your research and educate yourself on how to sun gaze, shall we say, in order to be able to kick off some of these processes. So melatonin itself increases production of enzymes that are needed to fight the reactive oxygen species in the brain, as I have been talking about, right? It's in fact effective against the viral infections that melatonin is effective against Ebola, dengue, encephalomyelitis, or those types of inflammation and through the brain tissue. So important, so important. And if I'm going to sort of link it a little bit to Parkinson's, there's an accumulation of a protein, and the melatonin can attack that and makes it available to be removed from the system. So we need to be able to be producing enough levels of melatonin to be able to do all the magical things that it does. And studies are showing that melatonin can reverse the damage done in Parkinson's disease and helps to restore the normal activity of the key enzymes that are involved in the synthesis of dopamine. So, of course, with Parkinson's, it's there's a issue with dopamine production as well, and the dopamine producing centers in the brain. But I want you to just think for a moment, again, if I go back to the gut health and the link with the inflammatory or an imbalance of the microbiota in the or the microbiome in the gut, or inflammation through the gut tract, most of your 95% of your serotonin is produced in the gut, and I'll tell you why that's important in a second. And about half of the dopamine that we produce is in through the gut as well. So linking that all together is how we then are able to restore a system through knowing, those pathways and how, from a holistic perspective, we operate as beings. Melatonin is, and going to the serotonin, because I said I'd link that up for you. So where have I written it? Because I did write it down. So melatonin is produced. It's not just about being out in the sun and the circadian rhythm and daylight cycles and all that kind of stuff, or night and day cycles and things. It's melatonin is produced through kind of a 4-step enzymatic pathway, and it actually begins through tryptophan. And so tryptophan, which is an essential amino acid, so you need to get it through your foods. So things like oats, cheese, nuts, seeds, turkey, of course, and chicken contain high amounts of tryptophan as well. So tryptophan gets converted through 4 steps. It gets converted pretty much to serotonin, and then serotonin itself is converted to melatonin. So again, most of your serotonin is produced in your gut. So gut health is so important in terms of anti-aging, because of its links through how melatonin itself is produced in the system. It's also, while I'm talking about some of the other properties, it's got a really protective element to what we call ischemic perfusion injuries. So, for example, strokes or bleeds, really do a really bad sprained ankle, and you get that really, really dark, thick, massive area of bruising through that. Well, you then have a loss of sort of oxygen to those tissues. And there's all the debris and the broken, damaged tissue and all that kind of stuff. However, you then getting this double effect of not getting enough oxygen to the existing cells there, and so that itself creates more damage as well. So melatonin is incredibly effective on restoring from those injuries. And I know for myself through the frequencies, if I've been sometimes I don't always have the signals that I need as a first choice, and I have placed melatonin on areas of extensive bruising, and what a significant improvement in a very, very short period of time that placing melatonin on the area has done for the clearing and the restoring and the healing of an injury. So with those types of injuries. So yeah, miraculous little super antioxidant it is. So here we go. I have talked about melatonin in the GI, the gastrointestinal tract. It has an inhibitory effect on gastric acid secretion, and so that can be really important for those that are overproducing the stomach acid and getting acid reflux. Well, instead of taking a pill for that, figure out why that's happening. So either the production of the bile has been impacted, so there's something going on, and if you can trip the system back, then that's really helpful too. So melatonin is going to help regulate those aspects as well. It can also protect the gastrointestinal mucosa from ulcerating. So I'm really going to shout out to anybody who deals with any kind of gut issues, whether it's on irritable bowel, lactose, gluten intolerances, all those types of things. Like, these are signs that there is something not operating optimally in your body. And it's not okay, in my mind, to just say, that's the way that it is, because it doesn't have to be that way. Crohn's, any of those types of ulcerations, things like that, there's something not quite right in the body. Do something about it. Life will be completely different. Trust me. So yeah, it can protect the gastrointestinal mucosa from ulceration through its antioxidant action and stimulation of the immune system. And then it can limit the gastric mucosal injury and really get in and help promote the epithelial regeneration as well. So, who knew, right? Also moderates visceral sensation. I think that's probably quite fascinating too. So I hope that helps you a little bit to understand melatonin and how important it is, and how, again, I'm going to reiterate and emphasize that it's not that you run out of producing it, it's that the signal becomes stressed at either ends of its normal and optimal bandwidth, so we need to restore it to its ideal signaling and then watch everything else fall into place. That is how frequencies work. And you can transmute melatonin, of course, as higher frequencies and higher states of consciousness interact with the pineal gland. So how cool is that? The Kundalini breath work. So if you are sort of dabbling a little bit in meditative work, or doing your yoga, or whatever it is that you are bringing a sense of balance or calm or stillness in your life, if we start to then understand more about the power of some of the work that we do, then it's easier for us to do it on a more regular basis. So Kundalini work basically what happens is that you are using breath and then squeezing energy up through the chakra system, right? And what happens from a physiological perspective is that the cerebral spinal fluid that washes your main cabling lines, like your central electrical circuits, and washes all the brain, excuse me, networks as well. Well, that fluid, as you work through Kundalini work, then the pressure, it kind of milks that fluid all the way up, and it puts pressure on the pineal gland itself. So they believe in the metaphysical world that the pineal gland is the seat of the soul, right? So if you're looking to reconnect with yourself, to be able to figure out what on earth it is that you're doing here, and to be able to bring your own capacities, or enhance and increase your capacities to be able to know, to be able to sense, to be able to strengthen your clear sentience, or your clairvoyance, or your telepathy skills, or whatever it is, because we can all do this. Then know that through the Kundalini work that's just what's happening. So you get this pressure from the fluid on the pineal gland, and that transmutes the melatonin into another form that allows us to really access these higher states of consciousness, which is where the information is. It's in the quantum, man. And there you go. That's melatonin and Schumanns Resonance, and all the power of language, and remembering who you are. Yeah. You are not your physical body. You are much greater than that. You are much more beyond that. And, you know, our world is rigged, the 3D world is rigged to keep people from, you know, expanding and being able to access these states. And the more that we know and find out how to do that, the more it really is about being, right? We're not spending enough, well, I know a lot of my life I was actively doing, but if we can start to spend more time being, watch how it all starts to happen for you. And on that note, maybe the next talk that I will talk about a little bit is what they call the human design. So are you a manifesting generator? Are you a generator? Are you a projector by design? And why would you even want to know? Well, because if you may find that if you just changed how you approach some aspects of your life, you know, it would flip things on a 180, and a whole new world would open up. But before I go, I will say I did have the pleasure of visiting with a friend, a dear friend, a beautiful soul, yesterday. And I know when I first crossed paths with this human being, that life was a bit chaotic and hectic and upside down and lacking direction, only for, you know, because of the inability for clarity or what have you. And I'm going to tell you, I went, whoa, what a trajectory, what a wonderful thing to see somebody's life start to really rebalance and take a much more purposeful trajectory, and it was reflective in every single aspect of the space that they are inhabiting, of their vision for their future, all that kind of stuff. So I'm loving that. So if you're out there and you are struggling for whatever and with whatever, please hit me up. I have a real big passion in helping people reconnect with themselves post-trauma. There's a lot of fragmented souls out there, so hit me up, man. All right, I think my dogs had enough of me wiring on, and if you're still listening, well done, and if you've caught the replay, great. Again, I'm always up for conscious discussions. Oh, and do keep an eye out. We've got our retreat coming up at the end of August. I'm super excited. Amanda Betts is going to be joining us for that, and you only have to be in her presence for a short period of time to know what a wonderful experience that is, and how life-changing her work is also. So, peace out. Back to doing something else.